Hey everyone, it's Emily Graziano here, and I'm here to do a film review today about the 1975 Universal movie called The Great Waldo Pepper, starring Robert Redford, directed by George Roy Hill, written by the screenwriter William Goldman and George Roy Hill. Guys, this movie has been on my watch list for about a year, and that's not the most embarrassing wait time that I've had for my watch list. The Electric Horseman has been on my watch list for the past 5 years. Let me repeat that, 5 freaking years. Don't be surprised if that's the next movie I end up reviewing, because it's been on there for like half a decade. So, guys, a little bit about this, for the reasonings why I wanted to watch this movie. First of all, I have a great interest in the time period in which this movie is set. This movie is set from 1926 to 1931, so it's the interwar period, and I've always had a fascination with that era ever since I was little. The 20s, the 30s, I love the style. I love really the fact that it was the beginning of pop culture, where you had the movies to talk about. You had silent and more so the introduction of talking pictures, and you had the rise of all these really amazing legends like Cary Grant and William Powell and Clark Gable, and of course the starlets like, oh god, who's a great 1930s actress. They elude me at the moment, but I've always had such a fascination for this era, and it was just such an interesting time in history, how we were between these two great world wars that would change the entire world. And I'm a great student of world history, even just in my own personal life, and I've always found the 20s and the 30s to be a real niche for me, so that automatically drew me to this movie with the time period alone. The second reason is the fact Robert Redford is in this movie. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about him later and what I think of him in this movie, but I'll just say this as a little teaser. I think Robert Redford is the last great all-American leading man this country has ever seen, ever. So that's number 2. And number 3, this movie, a good friend of mine just watched this movie and said really a ton of positive things about it, and how fascinating it was, and how it actually gets really dark, but it's still really good because it's just that good. So this movie review is for you, and I really hope you enjoy my take on it. And with that, guys, I'll talk a little bit about the background. So for director George Roy Hill, this was a passion project of his. He was a real-life pilot, and I always find it fascinating when directors do passion projects, or actors do passion projects, because they may not be the most critically acclaimed or do the best at the box office or even be remembered, but you actually can learn a lot about the person, and that's captured on film forever. And when you watch movies like this, it's like, wow, they really know what they're talking about. This is their great other interest in life besides movie making, and they just know the background, they know the material. It's very believable when you're watching them on screen. And I think that's really amazing. Some other famous passion projects, you have something like The Quiet Man for John Ford, about his Irish roots, being Irish in America and then going back to Ireland to discover your roots. That's an amazing movie. You have Natalie Wood, who did Inside Daisy Clover, about being a child star in the whole Hollywood machine back in the early days of the studio system. That was her passion project. Not really remembered too well today, but it has a great cult following. I'm in the cult of that fascinating movie because she basically lived that real life situation. And then you have something like this with George Roy Hill, who, yes, he did The Sting, and he did Butch Cassidy. Probably those are his 2 most other well-known famous movies, both of which also have Robert Redford and screenwriter William Goldman. But this was his passion project, in which, if you need to know something about him, you watch this movie, because he himself, like I said, was actually a pilot, and he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was talking about. He had a vision of how he wanted these aerial sequences to be shot and how he wanted them to look on screen. And that's one of the great positives of this movie, is that the aerial sequences, you're watching it and you're like, how do they do that? How does that look so realistic? And the answer is because it was realistic. They had a real stunt pilot, Frank Tallman, who did all of the aerial shots in the plane while flying. So that's how they did that. But then you watch these sequences and you realize how dangerous they can be, and then you realize, oh my god, wait, that was real danger. There is no harness. There is no, okay, we're just gonna put you on a soundstage and act like you're in the air. It's all legitimately real. So I found that very fascinating. So with that background, let's delve into a little bit about the premise of this movie, in which I can't say too much, because if I did say too much, there would be a lot of spoilers, and I don't want to spoil anything for you, the potential viewer, because I feel I would take that experience away from you. And I went back and forth on this. Do I mention some spoilers or not? And I've decided to not mention some spoilers. So this will be a spoil-free review. Robert Redford portrays the Great Waldo Pepper, who is not the greatest flyer in the world. He's the second greatest pilot in the world. Waldo Pepper, for the record, is a fictional person who is based on real-life pilot Ormer Locklear. And Ormer Locklear was a real-life pilot turned stunt pilot who did early work in silent pictures, and unfortunately, he passed away young while doing aerial work. It's kind of really sad. You can go look it up. It's really sad. Anyway, and Waldo Pepper is this World War I veteran pilot who did not achieve real glory in World War I. And like a lot of returning veterans from war, both in World War I and World War II, is now out of a job, doesn't have a direction in life, so he kind of resorts to a concept called barnstorming. And if you don't know what barnstorming is, it's this concept in early aviation that actually died out with the advent of commercial flying. So back then, if you had a plane, you had an opportunity to cause a spectacle. So these pilots would fly into what usually are small towns, and they would perform tricks and stunts and give people rides, and it would be, oh, I saw a pilot in person, I got to see a real airplane, and it would cause this big spectacle, and it was a way for pilots to make money. So, especially after World War I, when there were a lot of pilots. So it was like the golden era for barnstorming. And it was a new concept. So there would be all this spectacle. It was a real spectacle. It kind of like be the equivalent of us getting our picture taken with an astronaut who's about to blast off into space, or about to blast off to Mars if that project ever got off the ground. Anyway, so we have Robert Redford playing this pilot, and you see all this play out in kind of like the title sequence of him barnstorming into town, in a small town in Nebraska, gathering a crowd. This little boy, he tells them, if you go get me some fuel for the day, at the end of the day I'll give you a free ride. And it's really sweet. You believe it too, because Robert Redford is this charismatic guy who is just, he sells it. He sells that image of, yes, I'm a great flyer, I'm a pilot, hello, good people. He says that directly in the opening title sequence, and it's believable. Right away, he holds your attention, which is part of the reason why I think this movie works right from the get-go. And like all great pilots, even if you're the second greatest pilot, you're gonna have a rival. And in this movie, Waldo's rival is a man called Ernest Kessler, who is in the movie a World War I veteran from the German side, from the Central Powers. So you have this kind of rivalry between the two men that isn't really a rivalry, and that will be explained within the movie, and I'm not going to explain that because that would be too much of a spoiler. Ernest Kessler is based on a real-life flyer, a German flyer who fought in World War I called Ernest Udet. So I like that concept too, that even though these aren't real people, it's based on real-life events, real-life flyers. So I find that fascinating that, oh, we can use these concepts, but also we can take these concepts and make our own narrative. I really like that aspect of this movie. And then also in the movie we have Bo Svensson. Oh my god, that was terrible. Svensson, Svenson. That's more like the German pronunciation, I guess, or the Swedish, I think, who plays Axel Olsen. And Axel is kind of like an enemy turned ally of Waldo's. They're both kind of in the same business of barnstorming, and they have like this kind of rivalry for a minute, but then they realize, oh wait, if we join forces, we can actually make a lot more money. Like, we got 2 planes, we could do more aerial stunts and tricks, we could give more people rides, it'd be more of a spectacle, and that they saw not only 1 pilot, but 2 pilots and 2 planes. So he kind of forms this partnership with Axel. And then we have Susan Sarandon, who plays Mary Beth, who is kind of Axel's girlfriend. It's not really explained that they are together, but it's kind of like you kind of discover just through watching, like, oh, she is his girlfriend. So that was kind of interesting. And then we have Edward Harriman and Margot Kidder playing Waldo, respectively, Waldo's childhood friend and his girlfriend. They kind of have supporting roles, not much screen time, but I will say the screen time that they do have is very important. Like, Waldo's girlfriend, Maud, her character's Maud, doesn't really have a lot of screen time or a real vital role in the movie, yet her presence, like, if you cut it out, it changes the narrative. So every character is very important, no matter how much screen time they have or not. It's very important, and that's another aspect of what makes this movie very, very interesting. And then Erza, who he's Waldo's childhood friend and Maud's brother. He is a constructionist of planes, and he's also a pilot himself, so that makes for an interesting dynamic between the two, because Waldo, I don't want to say anything too spoilery, but I will say he's kind of vital into helping Waldo construct some of these intricate stunts. And so that, I'm not going to say anything more of that because I'll give too much away. Like I mentioned, this movie has real, legit flying footage, and it's very believable because Frank Tallman was a stunt pilot himself. You watch these sequences and you think, how are they doing that? How are they doing that? There's no green screen. There is no computer graphics. I will say the aerial sequences hold up today because they were legit back then, and they're going to be still legit now. So I think that's another great reason to watch this movie. And another aspect is that this movie, for being considered New Hollywood, kind of has its roots in Old Hollywood, because you have Edith Head doing the costumes and Henry Mancini doing the music. So that, to me, when I saw that in the opening credits, immediately got my attention, because Edith Head, the greatest costume designer in the history of Hollywood, in my humble opinion. Hitchcock, if she was good enough for Hitchcock and she was his favorite costume designer, she did Rear Window and Vertigo and Psycho and The Birds, and just, like, she did Marnie, and then she worked with, like, Audrey Hepburn on Sabrina and Funny Face, and it's just, if that's the legend she created for them, she's doing the costumes here, in which the costumes are kind of an important aspect, because it is a period piece. it's the 20s and 30s and it's being made in the 70s, that immediately screams, this is going to look good on camera because Edith Head is just so talented. And I want to talk a little bit about Robert Redford. Robert Redford was born to wear the period costume attire. He looks so freaking adorable in the 20s and 30s style suits and the caps and like the suspenders and everything, and it's just like, yes, this is part of what makes Robert Redford amazing. But also, I don't want to be too shallow because he's a good actor that not only looks great, but he knows his stuff. And that's another reason on why I adore Robert Redford. I think, like I said, he is the last great all-American leading man this country has ever had, and I really, really believe that. He may not have had, like, bam, out of the gate, he's a star, instant star, because Inside Daisy Clover and This Property is Condemned and The Chase, they weren't, like, real winners when they first came out. He had his first real success with Barefoot in the Park, which is a great movie. I love Barefoot in the Park, seriously. I will talk about that movie if you want me to in the future. And then he has... shortly after that, he had Butch Cassidy and the Sting. And then this movie kind of came after The Great Gatsby and 3 Days of the Condor, but, like, before All the President's Men. And I think it's kind of lost in a shuffle, and that's why it's kind of forgotten. But I think those movies can be the most interesting because it's like sandwiched between, like, oh, this movie and that movie, they were great, but oh wait, this one's kind of forgotten. How good is it? And I think that's another aspect that makes this movie so fascinating. So that's another reason why I think this movie needs to be seen. I hadn't even heard of it until, like, maybe a year ago, and I'm very glad that Shout put out the movie in itself. And let's take a look at the inside cover, because I love the artwork. Here we have Waldo, who is in the yellow plane, and his rival, Kessler, in the red plane. And this kind of is an important scene in the movie. I'm not going to say its context because that would kind of ruin it. But I find that interesting. And then we have on the disc here a great shot of Waldo, and it's interesting that there is a concept design in his aviator goggles. I find that very interesting. It's actually kind of foreshadowing, so I won't hold it up too long. But here, let me put this back in. But I'm very glad that I saw this movie. It starts off kind of cheery and full of energy and hope, and then these really, really dark instances start happening, and you're like, what just happened? The tone shifts, not super dramatically, but dramatically, and then it kind of goes on this path of, like, this problem after this problem after this problem after this problem, and you think to yourself, oh my god, this turned really dark really quick. But that's actually not a bad thing, because it just keeps your attention. It's like boom, 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 and it's like, wow, I didn't expect that, but it's in a fascinating way that holds your attention. So that's what I found really, really interesting about it. So I think for a movie that is not well known, it should be more well known. And I'll show you the back cover here. I don't know how well you can read that, but I'm glad that this movie doesn't give, well, this version of the movie, the Blu-ray, doesn't give away too many spoilers. Here we have Susan Sarandon's character who here and Waldo there. But yeah, I found this movie really, really interesting. I'm really glad I saw it. And it was mentioned first on the Video Archives podcast, and then my friend watched it, and then that's how I kind of got re-interested in watching it, because I'd wanted to watch it for about a year, but I put it on the back burner for like a year. Maybe that's a sign to me to not put movie on the back burner. But I'm really, really glad I saw it. It's fascinating. And guys, I'm just really glad I saw it because Robert Redford was so freaking phenomenal in it. So I'm Emily Graziano. I didn't want to keep this too long. I hope I've been able to do this movie justice, because it's kind of a hard movie to talk about without the spoilers, but I hope that I've done it justice in the sense that I've encouraged somebody out there. If I can encourage one person to go out and watch this, I've done a good job on it. But I want to thank you for watching this, and who knows? I've been on a Robert Redford kick lately, but that's not a bad thing. Come on, he's so gorgeous, so talented. What's not to like? I'm one of those women who is like, yes, I understand the phenomenon that is Robert Redford. But anyway, I want to thank you for watching this. I'm Emily Graziano, and I will see you in the next one. The Great Waldo Pepper, great movie. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.